Hello, Stillwater. Welcome back to the Still Connects podcast, a podcast all about Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm your host, Denver Evans, a born and raised Stillwater local and owner of Stillwater Digital Marketing. Each week, I'm sitting down to have a friendly chat with the local business owners and community leaders who help make Stillwater such a great place to live. So, whether you're a longtime resident or just a visitor, this is your place to stay plugged in, stay inspired, and still connect with the stories that shape our community. Also, this podcast is a real tour of Stillwater, so this is actually a mobile podcast that I record on location. Today's episode was recorded in Stonecloud, so if you hear a little bit of chatter in the background, that's all that is. I'm so excited for today's episode. I got to sit down with Audra Carter, the kitchen manager at Hatch, and also owner of Small World Supper Club. Let's jump right in. And audio, check, check. All right, cool. So I'm going to do a weird little intro, even though I'm going to pre-record an intro to go before this, say, hey, I was talking to Audra, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it here just in case.
Okay,
all right.
Sounds good.
Hey guys, thanks for joining the Still Connect podcast again. I'm here with Audra Carter. Audra, tell us about yourself. Tell us about all the things you do. I don't want to say which one thing you're from because you do so much.
Cool. Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name's Audra Carter. I'm a single mom here in Stillwater of 3 awesome kiddos. And I do wear multiple hats around here in Stillwater. So I am the kitchen manager over at Hatch, as well as kind of the culinary director of Upside Hospitality, which is an up-and-coming hospitality group that is grassroots here in Stillwater, owned and operated by Corey Williams. And I also own my own business called Small World Supper Club, which is kind of an eclectic pop-up restaurant, if you will, / private chef services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So tell me about each of those. Which one do you want to start with?
Whatever you think. So I don't know. About a year ago, I was working over at the Monarch. I had opened that kitchen over there, that restaurant, and it wasn't necessarily a fit for me, but I was, keeping my head down and doing what I could for the restaurant. Started picking back up my own side gig, if you will, which I had done in the past, and I put that on hold while we were starting the Monarch. But I decided to kind of put that back into place and did my very first pop-up here at Stonecloud.
Which is Small World Supper Club, right?
Which is now Small World Supper Club.
Okay.
Back then it was just Audra Carter.
Oh, yeah.
And a flat top
Yeah.
and some food. So I was doing a pop-up here last year, and it was for Christmas Vacation. They were showing that film, which they're going to be doing again in a couple weeks.
Oh, fun.
On the patio. And I was just, what we say in the industry, in the weeds, which it wasn't that bad. I love it. I love being busy. I love the hustle and bustle. But I just had tickets stacked. There was a line, and it was great energy. It was a great time. But our owner-operator over at Hatch, Corey, I didn't really know him super well, and I certainly didn't recognize him that evening, but I just noticed there was a man standing there watching me. It wasn't creepy or anything, but it was definitely like, okay, who's this person observing me?
Right.
But later found out it was him, and he approached me and had an opportunity, and I really vibed with it, and we had some great conversations, and that led me to Hatch. So if you've never been to Hatch, it's a wonderful upscale brunch spot here in Stillwater. We are the first franchise out of all the Hatches. They're a chain of corporate stores that started in Oklahoma City. We offer a really fun, eclectic brunch menu. We're open from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 6 a.m. Did I say 6 p.m.?
I don't know.
Let's backtrack. We're open from 6 a.m.
Yep.
Monday through Friday to 2 p.m., and we close at 3 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. So definitely early mood food, as we like to say.
Yep.
So Corey approached me, and he was like, I was watching you hustle, and I love what you're doing. My concept was using as local ingredients as I could, and then coming here and providing, some comforting, fun food that was sourced locally, and and so it was just kind of like a restaurant without walls is what the concept is there. But anyway, so Corey saw me working, and he was like, I like that you kept your composure and you were just doing what you had to do to get through your service, and he was like, I need a kitchen manager for this restaurant I just opened.
Yeah.
They tried to open without a kitchen manager, which is funny. This is probably more information than anybody would like me to share, but
No, we want to know.
the company that started all the Hatches Provisions Concepts, they have a rule that no restaurant shall be opened without a kitchen manager again. So they were about a month into opening when they hired me. So everybody else had been trained for weeks, and the restaurant had been open a month and a half when I started with the company. But so his proposal to me is, I know you don't want to go work at a brunch restaurant with someone else's menu. I see what you've done at the Monarch, where you've created these menus that were seasonal and ever-changing. I see what you're starting to do with these pop-ups, which have been pretty successful and a lot of fun. And he was like, this is not where I want you to end. I just need help stabilizing this place. And you have the experience and you have the drive. And he was like, but I have more opportunities and more, I want your creativity to blossom, but I need this right now. And if you can help me with that, here's the other things we could do. Yeah. So that's kind of the beginning of that relationship and why I'm at Hatch, really.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Hatch is celebrating 1 year today?
Yesterday.
Yeah. Which, for those of you listening to this in January, yesterday is December 11th. So let's kind of let's back it up. So
Sure.
where did you start? What got you into food, your whole culinary experience, and just Stillwater?
Sure. Well, I feel like my love for cooking started from as early as I can remember. Being in the kitchen with my grandparents. My grandparents were older. My grandma just really needed help. And so I remember peeling potatoes and stuff from the age of 3 and just being in the kitchen so much and just loving it. I think that acts of service and cooking in general is kind of my love language. And I have just always really loved that moment when you give somebody a plate of food or you share a plate of food with somebody. It's always resonated so deeply within me. And so I've always known that I want to do that. I've had some periods in my life where I've questioned it or questioned my abilities, to survive in the industry as a female, as a single mom, but I've always come back to that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. My first restaurant job in Stillwater was Giuseppe's.
Oh,
actually.
yeah? Wow,
yeah.
Okay.
But old school.
So you're from around here?
I grew up in Cushing.
Okay.
Yeah. I graduated high school from Cushing.
Okay, because I was Giuseppe's, man. That was a while back.
It was a while back. So
I remember Giuseppe's. That was good.
Yeah, I did a year of culinary school in Okmulgee, and I moved here, got my first apartment in 2011, and I was commuting, and I was working at this steakhouse in Beggs that one of my culinary instructors owned, whom I had begged for that job, and he told me no at least 30 times until he desperately needed a line cook all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So I worked there. I worked at the Cushing Country Club as a server because they wouldn't allow me as a female to work in the kitchen.
Really?
Yeah, I hated it.
Why?
It's gotten better, but it's definitely a male-driven industry.
Okay.
And I don't know. I would have had to have a lot of experience back then to get a job in certain kitchens. And, some people were more open to it. And certainly, like I said, it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
But anyway, I moved here, and so I was driving there for those jobs, and I was swinging through different restaurants trying to find a job, and Giuseppe's was the first one to hire me. They were like, okay, we'll start you off in the dish pit, but we'll give you a job. And so I started washing dishes, worked my way to salad person, to grill cook, to prep cook, to baker, to all of a sudden I was running the whole line for lunch, and then I became a kitchen supervisor over there and just kind of worked my way up with them and some confidence in the kitchen. I went from there to Brooklyn's when that place was around.
Mm-hmm. Where Granny's is now.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I kind of hit a wall and felt like I had imposter syndrome, that the industry was super saturated and I didn't have the talent that it took to get move up. I would never be in true management. I would never be a real quote unquote chef, and what does that even mean?
Right.
Right. I know what it means to me, but it means so many different things to so many different people that I kind of withdrew from the industry for a while. Yeah.
That makes sense. So, I mean, I think anybody, and I feel like a lot of people who aren't small business owners might not get this, but when you're basically out there trying to, in some sense, like make a name for yourself or develop your skills or whatever, and you're looking at your career very entrepreneurially, that imposter syndrome is just like so real.
It is
like
so real.
Yeah, like because when you said, oh, whatever it means to be a chef, I've dealt with the same thing of being a photographer, being a videographer, being a wedding photographer, like all those things. Like, what's a real wedding photographer, that type of thing. And then when we saw the opportunity, my wife and I, to and this is actually kind of when we were dating that I started working on this, but to kind of step into the marketing side and start taking over some like social media and things like that for businesses, it was like, oh, well, what makes you a marketer, sort of thing.
Do you have what it takes?
Do you have what it takes? Yeah, and what it takes is making sure that every post goes out every day. Like, it's crazy. I think it was last year, 2023, we published 4,500 posts.
Wow.
Over 4,500. Yeah.
That's impressive.
So I totally get the whole imposter syndrome. You want to quit, man.
Yeah, and it still creeps up on me every once in a while.
Oh, like every other day for me.
No, totally.
What is a podcaster?
Do I have what it takes?
Do I have what it takes? Yeah. So that's really cool. So tell me about, like, how did you get back in then?
So when I took a break from the industry, I became a mother, and
Congrats.
Thank you. And that was circa like 2015. And I don't know, I wanted to focus on my kids. I had to work, but I didn't want to be too far from my baby, my first child.
Right.
And so I got a job in a daycare. I worked at the Methodist Church for several years, and I took care of little toddlers and 1-year-olds. And that way my child was able to be right down the hall, and I could check on him whenever I wanted. But I always, I missed it so much. Yeah. I would think about it all the time. I miss the smell of the stainless steel when you walk into a clean kitchen, industrial kitchen, and I started, my ex and I, we had nothing. We had no money ever. And just out of necessity, I started baking from home.
Okay.
And so I did that for a few years, and I would do a lot of dietary restriction orders, so people who needed gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, and I just baked all the time and kind of honed down that skill, which I didn't really have before, which, the timing was kind of cool. But I was in a pretty abusive relationship, to be honest, and I would talk often about wanting to get back in the industry, and I was always kind of convinced that I didn't have what it took, or that it was not right for a mother to want to be a chef or to be a professional cook. Like those couldn't coexist, and I believed that rhetoric for a long time. Yeah. Things got really hairy, and the struggle got worse, and got to a point where we separated. I was pregnant with our third child when we separated, and then COVID happened.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just like, I don't think I could have ever gotten more lower, if you will.
Yeah.
And so COVID happened, and I was cooking all the time. Like, I was with my babies. I didn't have a job. We had nothing, and except for each other, and I was just cooking all the time, and I was loving it. I mean, I was
like cooking at home still doing like the bakery type stuff from home.
A little bit, but everything was shut down too, and so I wasn't like getting a bunch of orders.
Oh yeah, because I guess people aren't really having parties.
Yeah, and so it was just me and the kiddos, and so I was just playing around with recipes. There was nothing else to do. We had nowhere to go, and I started thinking, and I was just like, I want to do this. This brings me joy. I was in like the depths of my worst depression, but that brought me joy. My kids brought me joy, and I started thinking, like, what at this point in my life, I am the only person keeping me from pursuing what I want to do. I'm not with this person that was restricting me and keeping me from doing what I loved and making me think that I was not enough or that I couldn't do, follow my dreams. And I had this moment. I'm like, you're the only person now keeping you from this. And that same night, it was like an epiphany. That same night I got on Facebook and I saw that Good Little Eater was hiring, and they were opening their dining room back up. It was like kind of fall-ish. I think things were kind of creeping open a little bit. And I had always wanted to go to her restaurant. I was always fascinated with her concept, and I thought, like, from afar, she seemed like I always like fangirled over her, but I had never gone to her restaurant. We never ate out much,
Right.
And so on a whim, I like call my mom and I'm like, hey, if I get a part-time job in a kitchen, I know this sounds crazy, I have 3 kids, and I was like, could you help me pick the kids up from school? If I could just work a few hours here and there at this little bakery restaurant, it would just really fill my cup. And it took some convincing, but she agreed to help me out so I could do that. And I applied, and I had an interview with Sarah, and we just like hit it off.
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, and so that she was like the liaison, like back into the industry for me, was working at Good Little Eater. And what was really cool was just like on a whole emotional level, it's like I needed her as well to see somebody who was like getting goosebumps thinking about it. But to have somebody who was so unapologetically herself and a very strong woman and running this little restaurant, doing it her own way, like I really needed that in my life. And I feel like after I got that and I had that, built that relationship with Sarah and had that job, things just kind of trickled from there to where I'm at right now.
That is so cool. So did you go straight from Good Little Eater to Monarch?
I did not. So I was at Good Little Eater. I was still kind of at the daycare for a while. Oh,
You're fine.
I was loving being at Good Little Eater, and I wanted to do it more. I was working like 3 or 4 hours, 3 days a week. And so I let the daycare know I need to pursue this. I have this like itch that I need to scratch, and I'm loving this. And so I kind of eased my way out of that to working at Good Little Eater full time. I was just enjoying it so much. And I had a friend who used to work at Giuseppe's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she worked front of house, and she now is the assistant director over Cowboy Dining. She's been there for a long time. Her name's Andrea. Shout out, Andrea. She is awesome, and she does so much for the stadium, and she takes care and organizes like all of the suites and all of that stuff for all the football games, basketball games, all the sporting events. It's a huge operation, plus feeding all of the athletes is what they do. And she reached out to me and said, hey, I see that you're back kind of cooking, and I see that you're working at Good Little Eater. I think that's wonderful, but I have this opening and I need somebody. And it paid well. There was benefits included with it. At that time, I had not made as much money as they were offering ever. And not that it was like an incredible amount.
Right. But yeah.
But
still.
yeah, and so it was just like this next step in my professional career. And she was like, I just wanted to let you know that I think you'd be great at it, and we'd love to have you interview for it if you'd be interested. So I interviewed for it with a couple of different people, and I decided to pursue it. And that was really cool. I really got my hands on bulk cooking, and we made everything nearly from scratch for these athletes. And for game days, the operation was just really cool to be a part of and see what it takes to pull off the things that they do over there at Boone Pickens Stadium.
Yeah.
You don't really think about what goes on behind the scenes in that regard.
Oh, I bet there's just so much food.
Yeah.
Like taking catering to just like...
On any given day, we could feed anywhere from like the 10-person equestrian team to 6,000 football fans. It's just,
unbelievable.
it was really cool to be a part of. But I always had this like every day, my creative itch would grow.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like...
You're like trying to make hot dogs fancy.
Exactly. So
not that you can't make hot dogs fancy, but
I had a dinner party at my house with a couple of people. One of them being my very good friend, Kara Evans, who she is super involved in small business startups and entrepreneurial aspect of career tech. She works at Francis Tuttle right now. I had her over for dinner, and I was telling her how I wanted to start this side hustle where I private dinner parties for people, or I wanted to cook for people on that creative level. And she was like, tell me how much you spent on this whole meal right now, and let's break this down. And
we're going to make a business plan.
Kara and I have not stopped being in like cahoots since that day. Yeah. We've not only become like the best of friends, but she's also been a huge mentor for me in starting my business and has been such a cheerleader, and I owe her so much.
Yeah.
But she really helped me see that I could do this and I could make money off of this and that I am worth a real like dollar amount.
Right.
You know, I stopped baking out of my home because I would spend like 6 to 8 hours on this extravagant dessert that somebody wants to pay $25.
Right.
You know, and I did
Right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
But knowing and learning like what you're worth and putting a dollar amount on it is very hard, but it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Sure, you can relate to that.
100%, because it gets to a point. I heard this from. I'm not going to try to quote who it was. I think it was Chris. This guy Chris Doe. He does like professional development for artists, and so he talks to people who are like graphic designers, photographers, those types of people, and just kind of helping them find what that dollar amount is. And what he says is basically you set a price, and then once your schedule gets full, you increase your price. And you might lose half your people, but if you're making twice as much, you're making the same amount of money in half the time. And then you keep doing that and you build your reputation, you get your schedule full, and then you increase your price, you lose some people, but again, you're making more money. And that because it's based on how many people are coming to you, that shows you that dollar amount is actually the right number. And maybe you'll start too small and you'll just get like 100 yeses, immediately. But that, because a lot of times when people are just jumping into any kind of market, whether it's photography, whether it's cooking, whether, any of those things, you don't know. You don't know until you know. And especially if you're starting off, you're not going to be like, you're not Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah. So what was that like stepping from the sort of employment side of cooking into the small business owner world doing the same thing?
It's still a process.
Yeah.
It's still happening.
It always will be, I bet.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think so. So I was at the stadium, and it's when I kind of started taking on little events on my own here and there. Mm-hmm. And that's the same year that Our Daily Bread started their annual fundraiser as the Payne County Top Chef thing.
Yeah.
And so I remember now I saw advertised needing people to help with it on Facebook, and I immediately reached out and I was like, if you need help with setup, consultation, like I can help however is needed. Like I want to help you guys with this event. And they were like, actually, could you compete as like one of the chefs? Nice. And at that time I was going through this thing in my head where it's like I said, I'll backtrack to like what makes a chef, right? I had a really dear colleague at the stadium who is no longer with us, but he was a chef and he taught at Meridian for over a decade as a culinary instructor. And I still wasn't convinced that I had made it to that point, Yeah. And I was in a spot in one of our kitchens at the stadium where I could see Joe and this other person he was talking to, but they couldn't see me. And they were talking about me, and he just goes, she's an incredible chef. And I just broke.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this person I admire and look up to sees me as this. And it was just over from there.
Yeah.
It was the inspiration and the motivation I needed to take myself to the next level. And so I feel like that was a turning point, and I was starting to do a few events here and there. And then when we did Top Chef, I got more inquiries about doing private events. And so I would just, I would do a lot of meal prep for clients, and I would make a week's worth of really nice meals. I would do office dinner parties or holiday parties, and that's kind of where it started. But I always had to work very carefully around who I was working for. So from the stadium, I went also to Meridian, and I worked in their culinary department for a year.
Oh, cool.
And so I don't know, each year it's kind of another opportunity would present itself. Yeah. I did 3 seasons with the stadium, but the third one I did, I only did the football games with them. But so I went from there to Meridian, and I was there for a year, which I loved working with the high school students. It was a lot of fun. And then I heard that we were getting a restaurant called the Monarch, and they were in need of staff, and they were in need of a chef. And I was just being really nosy, and I popped in one day, and I was like, what are you guys up to? And here I did. I just came by, and they asked if they could interview me which I wasn't prepared for, but it
Oh,
was
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it clearly worked out. So yeah, there we go.
Cool.
Okay, yeah. Anyways, because it runs off of that, did I tell you about this guy from Kicker designed it?
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool guy.
Very cool.
I wouldn't be doing this podcast if I hadn't met this guy at church.
Oh, wow.
Like,
That's amazing.
Yeah. I have like some other podcast equipment, but it's just not the same quality.
Very cool.
This should be good. We just can't laugh too loud.
Sorry.
Chef, we actually have done some work with Our Daily Bread recently, and I just interviewed Rachel Condley yesterday, which
Amazing.
I have no idea what order these episodes are going to release, so that'll be out there when it's out there. So do not expect a certain order, but yeah, she's awesome. They're
wonderful.
awesome. Unbelievable story about how Our Daily Bread came together with like 5 different food banks and partners, and
Exactly.
so cool.
Yeah.
So what was the Top Chef event like?
Well, so when I heard about it, first of all, I'm a big like food TV fan, and so I was like, "That's such a fun concept."
Yeah.
But not only that, like I had been through some really hard times, and like my family utilized Our Daily Bread in the past
Oh yeah.
a good handful of times, and so it just felt really important to me to kind of be a part of what they were doing and give back and help in whatever way I could.
That
And
is
it was
so cool.
A lot of
Full
fun.
circle.
Totally. Yeah. It was a lot of fun to get to do it on that capacity. I kind of thought I'd be helping set up or, I don't know, but it's been a lot of fun. So I competed with them in that event twice, 2 years in a row. And this last year I was a judge. So they've changed kind of the setup
Yeah.
each year, but it's such a fun event and people get so excited about it. And we raise a lot of money, for Our Daily Bread, and it's just they're such an important asset to this community.
Are there any other nonprofits that you've been like involved with, done some work with, or you just like?
Well, I feel like Our Daily Bread is the main one that I've worked with the most. We did a pop-up recently where we asked people to bring items, and I was really impressed with the turnout. We asked for like specific items because they get a lot of the same stuff over and over again.
So what's on the horizon?
Well, that's a great question. So I have just been so inspired and motivated to grow Small World Supper Club. That's, like I said, that started as me kind of wanting to do private chef services and do dinner parties. And I learned about like the concept of a pop-up, which I love. So I just learned kind of about the concept of, a restaurant without a restaurant.
Yeah.
And which is kind of tricky to do for a lot of reasons. But we were struggling to bring people in to the Monarch, and so I said, what if we do Monarch at Stonecloud? We tried it, and we had a really great turnout, and we did just kind of like a farm to tap room style pop-up, but it was kind of bar food, and it was a great turnout. And I was like, I'm going to start doing this in my free time, which I had so much free time.
Yeah, of course.
And so on my days off or not conflicting with what I was doing at the Monarch, I started doing some pop-ups here, and I just loved it. I love the energy. I love the community, coming out and just building relationships with so many different people. I just fell in love with that. And I realized that it was something that I wanted to pursue. And I've had the concept Small World for like at least a decade.
Wow.
Like it being kind of an eclectic, seasonal and local happening, just food and service centered around community.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like recreate that feeling. Like the concept is like when you run into somebody or you have something in common with somebody and you're like, wow, it's a small world,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where that came from. I threw Supper Club on there because I feel like it needed something else. This summer, Sarah at Good Little Eater, she was going to be taking the whole summer off to travel with her family. And she reached out to me and she was like, would you be interested in renting out our space while we're gone?
Yep.
And doing whatever you want. And I was just like, yes.
Of course.
So
it was good. We were there. It was
you.
good.
It was so much fun. Gosh, I didn't have a single day off until like end of over the summer, but it was so worth it. And it was just really fun to see like the same people or new people coming each week. Each week was a different concept, a different pop-up, whether it was at Good Little Eater and you would sit down and eat there, take it to go, or we would come here and do it out on the patio. It was just a lot of fun, and we've just received a lot of good feedback, and people like that it's changing and that it's, you don't know what to expect. And so we just hope to keep building it up.
Yeah, it's cool because, I mean, where else can you go where a chef is just like making up a menu for like one night only? Like, that was so cool. And we came for Thanksgiving. It was amazing.
Oh,
it was incredible. Loved the sandwich.
Oh, thank you so much.
It was so good. We didn't stick around for the movie, but it was cool that you and Stonecloud, they did the whole planes, trains, and automobiles thing. Yeah. So.
Well, and I love working with Stonecloud because they do so much for the community. I've done pop-ups with them when they're benefiting Wings of Hope.
Right.
And places like that, or the Seville Center. And so Matt's a huge inspiration to me as a community leader. Yeah. And I love working alongside him. He's so good to me and to everybody. Yeah. But I don't know, the goal with Small World Supper Club is to never end it here, to always do pop-ups, always do events, but I obviously would love to get into a brick and mortar situation, and there's been concept of a food truck as well, or maybe both.
Very cool.
And so that's what, we're working towards.
Yeah, that's exciting.
We want people to come to Stillwater for this concept and for other concepts too, which I'm really grateful and hopeful to be a part of through Upside Hospitality. Yep. And so there's just a lot of cool things happening.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about Upside. What exactly is Upside?
So Upside Hospitality is a restaurant group here in Stillwater. And right now, the only restaurant you'll find under us is Hatch.
Okay.
I don't want to share too much, but we will have more restaurants and
exciting
other venues of service, I'll just say, under our belt in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay. So lots of cool things are happening, hopefully a little sooner than that too. But it's going to be a variety of wonderful spots that Stillwater, I think, really needs.
Very cool. So if I might ask, are they potentially going to be things like Hatch, where they're concepts that exist other places, or are they like they're new concepts?
So my hope, and what I believe, not that there's anything wrong with having a franchise or a corporate store or chain, is Hatch, as far as I understand right now, should be the only chain or franchise under our hospitality group. We're hoping to do mostly original concepts after this.
So cool.
Yeah, I'm awesome. Very stoked about all of the things that we have ideas on and the things that are moving. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Corey's been wonderful. He's super supportive of creativeness and people exploring their creativity. And he's been wonderful to work for. And I'm excited to see where our partnership goes.
Yeah. So how many people or entities are involved with Upside currently?
Well, we've got Dana Whelan, who is she's kind of like our COO of our hospitality group, and she does so much for Hatch and for all of us as employees of Upside. Yeah. But right now it's me and Corey and Dana, and we have Adam Cisco as well, who's the GM over at Hatch. And so we all are always talking about concepts and ideas, and there's a handful that are definitely in the books that are going to happen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's super exciting. Well, Audra, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Super excited to talk to you again as these things keep happening.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for tuning in to Still Connect. I'm so glad you joined us for this chat with Audra. She was awesome. It was so much fun getting to sit down at Stonecloud and record with her. And there's always more where that came from. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to follow on social media to stay in the loop, as well as share this podcast with all of your Stillwater friends so that we can grow the podcast, these conversations, and ultimately our community. If you want to go a step further and help bring these stories to life, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/stillconnectpodcast, where you can get early access to episodes, a peek behind the curtain at the podcast making process, and a shout out on an episode for as little as $5 a month. With our higher level tiers, you can get access to things like patron-only polls, special requests for the show, access to online Q&As, and in-person hangouts with me and your fellow patrons. No matter what your capacity for supporting the podcast is, every little bit helps grow this amazing community. And we all need community. So even when life gets busy, make sure you still connect.